This week on Quality Digest Live, we'll look at how technology is forcing a reassessment of risk management tools.
Plus, Baldrige and burgers. That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is sponsored by Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon carries the widest range of quality brands. With its extensive support network, Hexagon is also your partner. Hexagon Metrology. We are metrology.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 18th, 2015. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richman. All right, well, we're going to start the show this week with some news from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, specifically about the Baldrige National Quality Award program that NIST manages. A news item that we ran in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, titled Excellence by the Dozen, reports that 12 outstanding organizations who have applied for a Baldrige Award have been selected to receive site visits. Site visits, as many of you know, are the final hurdle for Baldrige applicants, and in November, we're going to find out which of these organizations, if any, will be honored with the 2015 Baldrige Award. There is no set number of Baldrige winners in each annual award cycle, so all, some, or none of them may be designated as winners. As is customary, the names of these dozen high performers have not yet been released, but we do know that 8 are in the healthcare sector, 2 are nonprofits, 1 is a small business, and 1 is an educational institution. A total of 26 organizations applied for the Baldrige this year, so slightly less than half are actually receiving site visits. All the applicants were rigorously evaluated by Baldrige's independent board of examiners in 7 important areas. First is leadership, then is strategy, customers, measurement, analysis, and knowledge management, workforce, operations, and finally, results. Examiners provide each applicant with up to 1,000 hours of review and a detailed report on the organization's strengths and opportunities for improvement. So when Baldrige says that this is a rigorous evaluation, I think that it's fair to say that they really mean it. As usual, healthcare organizations are leading the way this year. We have, I think we said 8 of the 12.
Yep.
Yeah, 75%.
And
of them.
that's been kind of the trend too.
Yep, that's really come to be expected. The sector, we've seen that the sector's really taken the Baldrige criteria to heart. And we personally, many of you probably remember, we personally chatted with organizations on this show who have achieved a lot of success and lasting improvement through adoption of the Baldrige and Sutter Health, I think.
Sutter Health, in our neck of the woods.
In our neck of the woods here in Northern California. Healthcare organizations continue to do really, really great work on the Baldrige. So for more information on this news item and the rest of the pieces that Dirk and I are going to be covering on today's show, be sure to check out the story links just below this video player screen. And, if you're a Baldrige fan, stay tuned. Dirk is going to be bringing you another story about the Baldrige program a little bit later in the show.
That's right.
That's right.
But first, let's talk about disaster.
Yes, right. Terrible.
Sometimes the show's a disaster.
Often.
Okay. When disaster strikes, one of the big problems very often is the availability of water. And the water supply may be compromised, meaning either fresh water may not be available, or the water supply itself may have become contaminated. So to help water utilities be prepared for a water crisis, ISO has just published ISO 24518. And the new standard lists the steps utilities have to take in order to be ready for any crisis situation. It also looks at what to do during an emergency and how to reestablish services and learn from the situation. Now, often when we think about safe water and sanitation, we think of it very often, first thing that comes to mind often is a third world issue, that this is a third world issue. And oddly enough, this was reinforced in the press release from ISO, which showed a couple of African kids getting water from a ditch. But if you think about it, think about the natural catastrophe. Yeah, that is the picture, and that is typically what we think of when we think of water and sanitation. So we think of third world countries. But if you think about some of the disasters that we have faced in the United States or in Japan, you can see the same problem exists everywhere. Think of the aftermath, for instance, of Hurricane Katrina. no water supply, and any water that was there was contaminated. So disaster preparedness and recovery as it applies to the water supply and sanitation is critical no matter where you are, because Mother Nature likes to throw things like earthquakes and hurricanes and tsunamis in your path. And when that happens, something that is so critical to our well-being and our livelihood and our life, like water, can become compromised. Now, what's interesting, well, or maybe not too surprising, is if you look at the structure of ISO 24518, you will see it looks very familiar. In fact, you'll see it looks a lot like ISO 9001, with many of the same sections, including, no big surprise here, risk assessment. What they're calling on as part of that section is that utilities, water companies, and so forth have to be looking ahead. How are we prepared in the event of a catastrophe, a disaster, something that would disrupt the water supply, and what is our preparedness for us? It also outlines the fundamentals of a crisis management system using the Plan, Do, Check, Act approach. So, talking about what it would take for a water utility to apply this standard, Jacobo Sack, convener of the working group that developed ISO 24518, says, quotes, "Well-developed utilities usually have most of the equipment and facilities needed and have established emergency processes for crisis situations in their daily operations." And what he's talking about is the things that would normally come up, broken water lines, that sort of stuff. So most already have some sort of crisis management in place, because those kind of things do happen. Infrastructure damage does happen all the time.
All the time.
So if this is the case, it's still worthwhile concentrating on organizational issues by establishing a crisis management team. And he adds that poorly equipped utilities might need to invest perhaps 10 to 20% of their total budget in developing this type of system. So it's quite a significant investment. According to ISO, ISO 24518 is the first of its kind. Although water safety documents have been published in the past, none have dealt specifically with crisis management in water utilities. So another one of those kind of management systems, but this time related to
water.
To water, yeah.
Yeah, certainly one of our, if not the most important, certainly one of the most important things that you need to keep society going.
Right, and I was thinking about this here in California. Obviously, we're in the middle of a 4-year drought. Yeah, in some ways, this applies as well. It's a slow train wreck catastrophe, not an overnight hurricane type catastrophe, but still being able to plan for what happens if you're going to have a drought, and do you have a system in place to, it's not quite as urgent as a catastrophe, but still a lot of the same rules got to apply.
Well, I mean, you're talking about disaster management versus management. I mean, management, it really just means, using your resources, making sure they're being used to their best advantage, they're being conserved, they're not being wasted. So whether you're in a catastrophe, a disaster, or it's just a day-to-day drought, or even if you're not in a drought, managing water is important, right? We have an exploding population. So, I mean, this is a really important thing. And, what I like about ISO is a very forward-looking organization. ISO keeps its finger on the pulse of the realities of the world, and they understand the standards that need to be developed and things that need to be improved to improve the lives of people. So it's a good. We like ISO. It's
exactly.
Good organization. Okay. Well, speaking more about risk, that story was really about risk, and this is another story about risk, kind of from a different angle, but an interesting angle, I thought. Pushing the Frontier of Risk Assessment and CAPA by Mary McAtee of IBS America appeared in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. You can see it up there for a second. There it is, Pushing the Frontier of Risk Assessment and CAPA by Mary McAtee. So she sets up her article by looking at a topic that is really near and dear to the hearts of most, I think if not all of us in the quality realm, technology, specifically society's rapid technological advancement, which seems to be increasing at an algebraic rate. Well, as Mary points out, these kind of advances generally don't just come from nowhere. If I have seen further than most, Isaac Newton once said, it is only because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. In other words, great leaps come about because innovators can spring off the work of their forebears. That's just the way it works. But standing on the shoulders of giants doesn't eliminate risk in many cases, the risks of failure or of ridicule and even the risk to life and limb. McAtee mentions Fulton's invention of the steam engine in the early 19th century, or the Wright brothers' discovery of heavier-than-air flight in the early 20th century. Multiple injuries and deaths accompanied both of these advancements and many other advancements that we take for granted now, but eventually they were made safe to the point where they became ubiquitous. And of course, many, if not most, major breakthroughs are the same way. I mean, really, anything that we use today, I think, in society that's technical in nature, had to go through a period of trial and a lot of error to make it safe,
Sure.
right? And those failure modes often resulted in the deaths of a lot of people that were the initial inventors of this stuff. I believe it was, I think it was Orville Wright who actually almost died from a plane crash, like in 1905.
Yeah.
And you know, certainly with steam engines as well, Mary makes the point, there was a lot of explosions of boilers in the early days of steam power, so it became very useful for society, but it took a few years for that to get there. So this is part of what happens with technological advances. Yet, the greater understanding of risk, which is now so much in the news within our industry, has actually exposed a situation that I think creates something of a dilemma for innovators. In short, the tools for managing and hopefully mitigating risk have not advanced as quickly as much of the technology that those tools must now help control. Long-standing methodologies such as failure mode and effects analysis and corrective and preventive action, in McAtee's view, are simply not nimble enough to handle the pace of innovation today. As McAtee writes in her article, and this is an interesting quote I want to show you here from the piece she talked about. Quote, "Improvements in virtual modeling and increased capacity in advanced data mining will almost certainly result in faster, more accurate, and more dependable preventive tools. There's absolutely no way that technology or the public demand for the next cool product will slow down. Those in the business of assuring that new technologies are safe and dependable within the boundaries of acceptable risk need to up their game and rise to the challenge." That's really interesting that she's saying that, because what she's saying is that we're really in a brave new world of innovation. We're in this point where innovation has come to the point where speed and data, customer demand, and greater competition across the world really is forcing us to evaluate risk kind of in real time. I mean, you thought about it when we referred to Fulton and we referred to the Wright brothers and other inventions like that. There was a period of time where it was kind of safe to experiment. It wasn't as safe for the people who had to do the experimentation, but it wasn't expected. The Wright brothers didn't expect to have a commercially available airliner in 1904, right? I mean, they were in the air in 1903, but they didn't expect that this was going to be developed that quickly. So they had some time to experiment and have some problems and straighten them out. So risk was much less of an imperative at that time, understanding and mitigating it. Now, we're in this world where there's no time. I mean, what Mary's saying is that we've shrunk down that time frame in which products need to be brought to the market, and you understand why. Again, the competition, you know, the hunger for new products amongst the consumers makes it a tall task. And now, McAtee doesn't offer any specific remedies for how to go about this, but I think what she's doing is she's throwing down the gauntlet, and she's advising us in no uncertain terms that, you know, better tools are needed. And for better or worse, thinking about risk is now part of ISO 9001. So this is really a front burner issue for quality professionals everywhere. And adding to the changing nature of product innovation as described here, there's, I think, going to definitely be an increased call for innovative approaches going forward to building a proper risk toolkit as well. It is interesting. I mean, Mary's onto something here. I think that risk and the risk tools, and it's actually been talked about in ISO 9001 too, those tools aren't very forward-looking. They're kind of things that have been around for a while. So now Mary's saying, well, we need new tools to handle new technologies. Right. And that's an interesting, I think she's right. I think we do need new tools to handle that stuff.
And need drives technology. So so it's not far.
They feed off of each other. Yeah, they feed off of each other. This idea that you're going to have new technologies. The reality of global markets now is forcing these technologies to evolve very quickly, and eventually those that need to test this stuff, you know, to make sure that it's safe for customers, have to figure out quicker, almost real-time ways to do that, to get these products out the door, because the imperative is to get them out the door, out the door quickly, reach consumers, and get them on the market. So this is not going to go away. This is going to be an issue that's going to continue to go forward, and we're going to be definitely keeping an eye on it.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay, so minimum wage.
That's right.
It's been in the news a lot recently. It's a hot topic, obviously, at the federal level as the federal government looks at trying to raise the minimum wage across the United States. And of course, many states have or will be implementing minimum wage hikes. For instance, New York City, I should say, fast food workers will be at $15 per hour by 2018, and I think they're shooting for the entire state of New York to be at 12 or 15 by 2020.
I think it is.
Something like that. Mm-hmm. So, of course, some people, like former McDonald's CEO Ed Renzi, say that the minimum wage increase will kill small businesses. Others, like various restaurant associations, have voiced the same sentiment, despite evidence to the contrary. It's kind of like they're thinking that the only way to have a successful fast food business is to make sure you pay your workers below subsistence level wages. And that is why I think it's interesting to look at fast food chains that pay above minimum wage and treat their workers with respect and get high ratings on employee satisfaction. And oh yes, by the way, are successful. So let's look at one of these. It's Pal's Sudden Service. Christine Schaefer, one of the contributors to the Baldrige blog, has a solid article on Pal's, which is a small burger chain based in Kingsport, Tennessee. For those of you who live on the West Coast like us, Pal's would be similar to, let's say, an In-N-Out burger. It's a small chain. Pal's has, I think, roughly 30 stores. In-N-Out has, I think, 300 stores. High quality, focus on customer service, and high wages, solid training, and good working conditions. Schaefer's article was called Baldrige Award-winning restaurant makes education its business. And in it, she points out that in 2001, Pal's Sudden Service received the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. As Mike already described, that is no small task. That award is not just handed out. You have to do a lot to achieve that award. Today, founder Pal Barger continues to share why he considers his company's investment in employee training to be cost-effective despite being in a high turnover industry. You don't keep people in fast food for a long period of time. So it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Training people when you know they aren't going to stick around. But Pal's focuses on customer service, which yields bottom line impact, even if those people providing that service are only there for a short time. So Schaefer reports that business leaders have asked Pal, what if you spend all this time and money training someone and then they leave? And his response to them was, suppose we don't, and they stay. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the people that represent your business. If you don't invest money in training them, you're only shooting yourself in the foot. And Pal's is serious about this. Supposedly, according to Schaefer and others, each day the CEO and every other company leader from general manager on up spends 10% of their time every day helping employees to develop skills. So we're not talking we teach customer service lip service here. Leaders spend 10% of their time at the Gemba helping employees develop skills and, I would imagine, getting probably a pretty good picture of how the floor is running. And the training at Pal's Sudden Service goes beyond, let's say, the standard customer service stuff, be polite, smile, all that sort of stuff. She writes that the training extends to cultivating behavioral traits for its workers to become future leaders, whether they work at Pal's or another business. So think about that. It's not just going through the motions, be sure you smile or be sure you shake somebody's hand or be polite. It's how do we change your behavior? How do we give you a behavior that fits into a customer service mode? That's a whole nother type of training. That's a completely different thing. The company also offers this training to leaders and employees of other organizations. Pal's, it's called the Business Excellence Institute, BEI, Pal's BEI, and it provides classes to help organizations around the world improve performance. So, when we think of raising minimum wage, it is more than just raising wages. If that is all you do, sure, you would be improving the standard of living for your workers. But if that's all you do, then you are going to be incurring an added expense without doing anything else to offset it, right? But if you really care about your workers and your bottom line, you do what Pal's and In-N-Out and others have done. You train your workers for the future. You train them to leave your employ and go into the world with skills they didn't have before. You set up your company as the place where employees and customers are valued. If you do that, the employee and your bottom line improve. There's another example. I mean, look at Costco, look at Trader Joe's, look at Wegmans. These are all companies that focus on customer service and at the same time have good programs and good wages and benefits for their employees. These all are companies that rank highly on both customer and employee satisfaction. And that is not a coincidence. That doesn't just happen. People like to go, people like to shop, like to give their business to companies that they believe are treating employees well. Yeah. And that only goes to help your bottom line. So it can't be lip service. You've got to go. You got to go the full Monty. You got to go all the way.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, you think about it. I mean, these minimum wage jobs are, are slightly above minimum wage job. There's so many millions of people in the United States who have these jobs, right? And many of them are young people. Not all of them, but many of them are young people. So the opportunity to educate someone in what it means to take ownership of your job, and to look at your customer as a valued opportunity to have an experience, is gonna improve the entire economy, because these young people are gonna go wherever they go. Like he says, I mean, if they leave, they go somewhere else and take those skills with them. But if you don't give them the skills and they stay, that's terrible, because then you have bad employees.
And also, you're contributing, by giving this training, you're contributing to the society as a whole, which only helps float everybody's boat, right?
It's the society as a whole, the economy as a whole, even more specifically, because again, these people are gonna, you give a 19-year-old person, a 21-year-old, whatever the age of the person is, or 16-year-old person, a job like this, and you begin to give them those skills, and they begin to see that and understand that, they're gonna carry that with them their entire life.
By the way, it's kind of common belief that the majority of fast food workers are teenagers.
Yeah.
It actually isn't.
Isn't true anymore.
75% are older than 20 years old, and half of them in that category, more than half, 56% are women. So we're not talking about some high school kid who needs some spending money. We're talking people who are trying to survive on this.
Exactly.
So, $7.50 an hour doesn't quite cut it.
Exactly right. Good point there, Dirk. Well, thank you. All righty. Well, next piece is called "How Does Your Organization Define Accountability?" And it's by Davis Baldrige, and it appeared in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Well, now what he's saying here is an important, you can see it right there. What Davis is saying here is an important question, and it's one that he's really been addressing, I think, in one way or another his entire career. And his entire career is as a management consultant, but his roots are in statistical analyses. So he's a management consultant who uses statistics as the backdrop for what he's talking about here. Well, the concept of accountability, unfortunately, often devolves into blame. And Baldrige has been fighting against this for a long time. This idea that management wants answers, right? So that they can point the finger at those who are at fault for what are almost always systemic problems built into a specific process. It's the conflation of special cause with common causes. It's something that Davis talks about all the time. And it goes right back to Deming, goes back to the red meat experiment, with this idea that it's almost never the employees that are the problem in the process. It's how you've designed your process to get the results it's getting, as Davis always says. So he's a big fan of Deming. He talks about Deming a lot in his work, and that makes sense, that there's this idea that there's a culture of blame going on there, especially in U.S. organizations. So that's an important kind of idea to have in your mind as you're beginning to look at this article from Davis. But holding people accountable without blaming them is still really important. I mean, you do need to hold people accountable. He's not saying that here that you don't want to do that. You need to be able to make sure people are doing what they say they're going to do, and that they're following through. So, how do you do that is really what he's getting at here. And furthermore to that is, what do you do about those employees who exhibit, this is a great term he uses here, who exhibit what he calls victimitis virus. I never heard of that before. The victimitis virus. I think you can kind of infer what that means. This virus of victimhood that pervades a lot of organizations. People are always kind of like the woe's me, and I can't believe that happened to me, and why. Well, Davis, in addressing that issue, which is really kind of the core concern of this piece, he references a colleague of his by the name of John Miller. John Miller has a company called QBQ. And John Miller has developed an ingenious, I think it's really an ingenious way to help those who have this victimitis virus kind of overcome their suffering from victimhood and take accountability for their actions. And it also, as a consequence, enables managers to help them take accountability for their actions, again, without pointing fingers and blaming anybody. And how you do this is pretty simple. Whenever a whiny victim, and Davis points this out, which is actually very, very valuable, the victim can be yourself. You can often be doing this yourself without knowing it, but when you have a whiny victim who wants to pass the buck with a bunch of who and why and when questions, Miller recommends that the person reframe the question under the following conditions. 1, it must begin with a what or a how. Okay, the question must begin with what or how. 2, it must contain the word I. Okay? And 3rd and final, it must contain an action. Okay, so how does that work, right? I mean, how does that play out in the actual environment at the Gemma, right? So you may have your victim of victimitis say, why can't we get our products delivered on time? Why? Right? You've done that. I hear you say that all the time, Dirk. You know, why can't we get QDD out on time?
Mike!
You say that all the time. Well, you don't want that person to do that necessarily. If you're a manager, you want them to reframe that. So maybe that person could say, what can I do to streamline our shipment processes so our product gets out on time? See, it's about accountability and action, right? I mean, what Davis is saying here, it's a kind of funny way he puts it, but it's a serious point. This idea that there's so much of that, you know, why, how does this happen? It's a very amorphous thing that it just happens. These things just happen. I have no responsibility for it, and I can't affect it. It's just happening out there. Well, take ownership of it. If you take ownership of it and you take accountability for it, you make it an I question. You know, you use the term what or how. What can I is a great one. How can I are great ways to link that, and then take an action. How can I, you know, talk to our team, or how can I do this? You're laughing.
How can I get you to do my job for me so I don't have to do anything, and then everything goes out on time?
You know, this is the problem with the American workforce, is there's always an ingenious person who wants to throw a monkey wrench in.
There's a way around it.
But you get what he's saying here. This idea that you can reframe, that's very good, Dirk, that you can reframe these things in a way that and you know, maybe you have to help your employee do it. I mean, if you're a manager, you may have to help your employee see that and help him or her do that when he or she is whining. Or again, if you're whining, if you're saying, why does this always happen to us? Take a step back. You know, if you're saying, again, if you're saying how or, you're saying who or why or when, and then you're not taking personal responsibility, you're probably whining. Right? So reframe it, you know, say how, and then say I, and then take an action, and you'll see that those questions become actionable questions that can also tie to accountability. Really good point.
Yeah, good stuff. Yep.
From John Miller, and again, it's QBQ is the name of John Miller's organization, and look it up. Interesting website there, and check out Davis's article again below the player page.
Actually, we haven't run any articles from John for a while either.
No.
All right.
Different John Miller, but anyway.
Oh, different John Miller? Oh, different John Miller. Okay. Never mind. All right. Well, we hadn't had a tweet of the week in a while, so let's do this week's tweet of the week.
This is an old tweet. This one has been around for a little bit.
That's right.
We've been trying to get to it for a while, and I thought it was something like, you know, Kennedy shot in Dallas.
Right. Yeah.
Outcome.
It's
not
that
known.
old. This one is from
But it's not quite that old.
Lalit Bajwani. Assuming you're ignorant, help solve your ignorance. A quote from Dan Rockwell. Assuming you're ignorant, help solve your ignorance.
You know, that's actually kind of similar to what Davis was just saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
First of all, assume that you're part of the problem.
That's right. And then maybe if you could take an action, you can help solve it.
So yeah, there we go. See?
Good stuff from
See, it's a good thing. That was from like a month ago, and it still ties in.
We've been wanting to use that tweet for a while, so thank you, Lalit, for that tweet. You can check out any of our tweets, all of our tweets at Quality Digest on Twitter, so check us out there for all those kind of great tweets we have. All right. Well, that is our show, but before we close, we'd like to offer thanks to today's sponsor, Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon Metrology is committed to helping you control your processes, enhance the quality of your products, and increase efficiencies. They empower you to stay one step ahead of a changing world with their wide range of product offerings, nearly 200 years of expertise, and an extensive support network. Hexagon Metrology, where quality comes together. For more information, just click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
That's right. And that is Quality Digest Live for this week. And thank you for joining us. And hey, there we go. We'll see you again next Friday.
You guys all have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday for another week of QDD and next Friday right here for QDL.